What's up, guys? I'm Festus Obi, and today we're talking about help desk and support jobs being underrated. Thank you for coming back to my channel. So I'm just going to move straight into it. For a job that is one of the particular positions that, the employees or people who get to interface with the clients directly or users of the products that we are trying to push out or the products we are supporting, there is this level of stigma that people weigh up, push onto the people who do these jobs. It's almost as though people who work for support roles are not smart enough, or they are people who are aiming for less and are not ambitious. And I think it's really something that is horrible. If you're not understanding what I'm saying so far, thank you so much, because maybe you just might be part of the people who are not doing this. And that is awesome. We need people that are more like you. Now, this video is not about pushing blames to people who do all of this stuff, because sometimes it's actually unconscious. You might be calling someone in support to help you with one particular thing, and they're just dancing around, and you already know what the problem is. Kudos to you for having those years of experience, but it's really not this person's fault that they are doing this job role. In fact, it might actually be a conscious decision that that person made to be there. Anyways, again, like I said, this video is not about pushing blames towards, who does this, who doesn't do that. Rather, today I'm going to be focusing on why starting your career doing a help desk or support role could be more of a strategized decision as against what people make it seem like, which is, you aiming for less. Now, why do I say that this is something that can be strategic? I actually really mean it when I say it's strategic. It has nothing to do with, you not being smart enough or stuff like that. It is more from the perspective of, this is something that takes you somewhere. I feel the need of, splitting this into two particular scenarios, but then they are kind of like connected, so I might just merge it. There are two sets of people in the IT industry these days, each of them obviously having different branches and branches out. The first is students who are intending to get into the IT business or IT industry, or people from other walks of life that are maybe doing something else, maybe teaching English, working menial jobs like in the factory, in the malls, grocery stores, and all that. Now, moving back to the students here, I am opportune and privileged. The reason why I'm saying opportune and privileged is because this puts me in the position where I'm able to also learn from these people's experiences. Now, I'm opportune and privileged to be in an environment with a high influx of international students, mostly from Africa. If you're an African, you would understand where I'm going with this. Now, the one common thing that we know about any educational system in Africa is that there are a lot of institutions and a lot of schools that have a low standard of education. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have good schools in Africa. Let me bring it back and say it slowly. There are a lot of institutions, especially those that the average to poor people go to. These kinds of institutions or schools are not of a good standard. And what happens is when people who are coming from that particular level get to this part where, students here in Europe, I live in Poland, so speaking from the Polish educational standard, you have students who from their high school, they've been programming, they've pretty much understood what it means to create functions, classes, they know what APIs are, databases, and all of that. And you're coming to study this for 3 short years in the educational system that is not even structured enough to teach you how or what building a product entails. You're learning programming from scratch. It could be pretty overwhelming, but nonetheless, it is something that you can achieve. But the major problem with this is the current way that computer science, computer engineering, or whatever is structured is you're doing a lot of stuff in the industry, which actually are different sectors. So you're learning computer networking, cyber security, user interface design, web development, mobile development, all of this stuff. And it can be really, really confusing as to choosing which one to begin with. So several times I find myself having sessions with students that are confused or asking the same questions that I asked when I started. And most of the answers I get when I ask them, which part of this interests you the most? The one common answer I get is, I don't know. I have no idea which one it is. And this is where starting your career from IT support helps. Now, it might actually be seen as you aiming for less, but it is actually what I did. In my case, obviously, it wasn't because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And that brings us to category number 2. Now, in category number 2 are students who obviously know what they want to do, but are unable to merge what they want to do with studies, but at the same time need a constant inflow of cash, which was my own position. So I knew I wanted to be a programmer. I wanted to be in the software development industry and all that. But being in that field entails me working full-time, which would not match with me studying full-time. But at the same time, I needed to pay bills. So going for something in the IT industry that gives me the flexibility to work and study was a perfect decision, which is why I went for the support role. Now, moving back to the sets of people who are not exactly sure what they are supposed to do, I would match the students with people who are coming to IT from other walks of life. So you're coming from working at a grocery store or coming from, working some factory job that you think is not comfortable for you anymore. Maybe because you're thinking about raising a family, getting married or something else, or you're thinking about just leveling up in general. Now, the IT industry obviously is one of those sectors in the economy that we know that there is a lot of money. So it's understandable why that would be your first choice. But at this point, chances are you do not know what particular role to start with. You don't know how do you begin and all that. You might have talked to a couple of friends and they've told you learn programming. But the thing is, working at that grocery store and learning programming might be difficult. Yes, there is a possibility that you can achieve it. A lot of people have done it. But the thing is, when you now finish learning the programming, whether even as a student, students also face this issue. When you finish learning programming, getting a job becomes difficult because you're almost seen as someone with no experience, even though you're able to build projects on the side. It is difficult because a lot of recruiters will tell you stuff like, we need someone with professional experience, which you do not have. But in the case of someone working for a grocery store and doing programming, it is going to be a smart move if you transition to working as an IT support or help desk engineer or whatever they call it these days in a company that you intend to level up. Why this gives you an upper edge is because when you're in that particular company, you're already inside, making connections internally with people who are software developers, recruiting or hiring managers. It's way easier because you could go for company meetups, career workshops, and all that companies organize within the company. Now, moving back to someone who does not understand what they want to do at all, whether you're coming from another industry or students, the IT support or help desk position is a particular role where you get to work with everything. And there is no way you do this job 4, 5, 6 months without being able to understand or discern which path you want to follow. But in order to make you understand what this is, I feel like it's important for me to paint the scenario of what the job actually looks like, because there is this negative narrative out there that IT support is essentially, someone calling you and telling you their computer don't work and you're asking them questions like, did you plug it to the socket? Is there power in your house? Did you use the power button? And all of those stuff, which is also the reason why I say it is really stigmatized and made to feel like people who do these jobs are not smart. But before we continue, let me give you that scenario of what working for IT support jobs actually looks like. All right, like I said, there is a lot more that goes on with the help desk or support job. There's a lot more that goes on the job that is way more than what people make it look like. Telling the user to turn off their computer and turn it on, asking them questions like, is it connected to the power source and all that. So this illustration is going to show you pretty much the basics of or illustration of the typical help desk job, what it is like. So let's start with the call initiation. So how does this whole thing work? Basically, the user gets to their desk or their computer, home office, office as it is these days. Actually, there's no difference between home office and main office these days. So let's say the user logs on or tries to log on to their application, their own account of a particular application that is used by the company, and they're having issues with it. the user is having issues and unable to log in, and then they pick up their phone and call the help desk central number, which obviously rings to anyone who is available, and someone has to pick up. So in most cases, this might be on the computer or even a desk phone, a Cisco phone or whatever. So just ignore the illustration there showing a typical phone. It might actually still be just a computer. So now if you're the one available, you pick up this and the original initiation goes on. You guys introduce yourself. The user tells you their name, explains what the issue is to you. You also introduce yourself and offer to help. Now, that's the first part, the introduction. Now, moving on, we go to the interesting part, which makes the help desk job vital and important to people with zero to no IT skill and are not sure exactly what they want to do. And that is the part of getting information and troubleshooting. Now, how does this work exactly? So now you already know what the problem of the user is. You go further to ask for extra information that will make you understand better to know how you can be of service and help. The first question in this instance, being that you're in a COVID era, typical question would be, are you working from home or from the office? From the illustration here I designed, you can see that the user answered that he or she is working from home. And then the next question would be, are you using a VPN? Because there is no way you can work or access company resources from your home network without actually being connected to the VPN. And the user says, yes, they are connected to the VPN. In an instance where it is a no, obviously we know the solution is telling them to connect to the VPN. But in this case, let's imagine the user said yes. We move on to the next bit, which is the part that is at the bottom over here. We can see that the next question, obviously, it makes sense to ask the user, if it is a web application, to ask the user, what browser are you using to access this web page, or what URL are you using, and all of those. And that would help you know if they're actually using the compatible browser and the exact URL to hit whether it is the home page of that application or the authentication page or endpoint. Now, let's assume that they are not using the compatible one. Obviously, you want to suggest that they switch to the particular one, whether it be Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, or Firefox, depending on what the application is built to do, and the services or microservices and all that goes on behind the scene. Now, moving on, let's imagine that is out of the way and the user obviously is using the correct and compatible browser. The next step would be asking them if they are having issues with their account. The only way you can know this is if you have access to check this. And sometimes even before doing that, you can know by the error message you're getting. It could be an account expiration, or the account is deactivated, or the password is expired. In this case, obviously you want to log in and reset the password if you have access to do this, or send it to the particular team. Now, that's a brief overview of what the typical help desk or support job looks like. There might be cases where it's more complex than this. There are companies that require support people to know Linux, SQL, and all of this stuff. But typically, it would be people calling because they have issues. From what you can deduce on this illustration, there is a lot going on. You're working with the network layer, application, hardware, and all of that. So in the case of the VPN, let's say there's an issue there. Depending on how the company is structured, you might be required to send it to the network team, the application obviously to the app team, password reset and all that. Chances are it might be done by the database team, or if there is a team that handles, like, say, Active Directory and all of that. Most companies have all of these designations done in a particular way that suits their need. To shed a little light on the illustration you just watched, now you can see how working or starting your career as an IT support engineer, especially if you're not exactly sure about which part of IT you want to get into, you can see how it gives you the opportunity to actually understand every layer that ties into a functional and a marketable product that is being used, like in a production environment. You see how you can build up skills like troubleshooting, being able to figure out if the problem is on the DB layer, the network layer, or the application layer or hardware layer even. And most importantly, you're able to work with the teams that do all of this stuff, because you're obviously sending or dispatching the tickets to them. Okay, this user is unable to log in, and I can tell that it's an issue with maybe the VPN, which is like obviously network related, or the password of the user, maybe that's like application related, or even the browser that the user is making use of. Now, three things that this illustration has taught us. Now you know how the layers of applications actually work, or the layers involved. The second one, you know how troubleshooting is done to figure out what the problem the client is having and what it might entail going further when you go to like a particular role. And thirdly, you know all the teams involved in a functional product and what their individual roles are like. This helps you and guides you to make a very wise and smart decision. So summarizing this video, whichever one you want to choose, whichever way you want to go, if you're not sure, IT support is definitely the place to start until you have it figured out. And there is no negative connotation with this. There shouldn't be any stigma or whatever. So long as you know the strategy that you're applying, so long as you understand why this is more strategic to you, it should only matter to you. Forget about whatever everyone in the industry makes it look like. Thank you, and I wish you good luck in your career moving further.